Imagine this. The same person who put you in the spotlight, stood by your name when the industry doubted you, and called you family in public, suddenly turns around and questions your loyalty. That's where the Gucci Mane versus Pooh Shiesty war truly begins, and this time, it's way deeper than music. Gucci Mane isn't just a rapper, he's a brand, a gatekeeper, a hip-hop institution. And Pooh Shiesty? He was labeled the future of 1017, the next big star carrying that legacy forward. But now fans are asking the uncomfortable question, did the student become the threat? Gucci's side claims loyalty was broken behind closed doors. Meanwhile, whispers from Pooh Shiesty's camp suggest a completely different story, one involving promises made, support expected, and silence that spoke louder than words. What really happened during those critical moments? And who crossed the line first? Industry insiders are saying this isn't just an internet drama. There are private phone calls, jail time decisions, and business moves that change everything. Fans are split down the middle. Some believe Gucci used his power to control the narrative, while others feel Pooh Shiesty forgot where he came from. But here's the twist, Pooh Shiesty isn't staying quiet anymore. This response isn't just a reply. It feels like an exposure. And if you think this beef ends with a statement or a song, think again. What's coming next could shake Gucci Mane's legacy and redefine Pooh Shiesty's future forever. Because once loyalty is questioned in hip-hop, there's no going back. Once loyalty is questioned in hip-hop, the damage is rarely quiet, and that's exactly where this story truly begins. Gucci Mane built 1017 Brick Squad as more than just a label. For years, it was sold as a family, a second-chance system for artists coming out of the streets with talent but no structure. When Pooh Shiesty entered that world, fans didn't just see another rapper, they saw Gucci's next chosen one. The cosigns were loud, the push was aggressive, and the message was clear. This is the future. At first, everything lined up perfectly. Pooh Shiesty's raw street energy balanced Gucci's veteran status. Features, interviews, visuals, the machine was moving. Industry insiders whispered that Gucci hadn't been this confident in a new artist since his early Brick Squad days. But behind the scenes, the relationship wasn't as smooth as it looked on camera. The cracks reportedly started when business expectations didn't match reality. Sources close to the situation claim Pooh Shiesty felt promises were made, support, visibility, protection during difficult times that didn't fully materialize when it mattered most. From his perspective, loyalty wasn't just about respect, it was about action when pressure hit. On the other side, Gucci's camp saw things very differently. To them, loyalty meant discipline, patience, and understanding the hierarchy. They believed Pooh Shiesty started moving like a star before earning long-term trust, blurring lines that shouldn't have been crossed. What one side calls self-confidence, the other sees as entitlement. Then came the moment that changed everything: Pooh Shiesty's legal troubles. In hip-hop, jail time often becomes the ultimate loyalty test. Fans watch closely to see who shows up, who speaks out, and who stays silent. According to multiple insiders, this was the point where emotions hardened. Silence was interpreted as abandonment. Distance felt intentional. And every move, or lack of one, was suddenly personal. While Gucci never publicly turned his back, his tone shifted. Interviews became colder. Support felt quieter. And when Gucci finally spoke, it wasn't just words, it sounded like a line being drawn. That's when fans realized this wasn't industry gossip anymore. This was a breakup. Online, the narrative exploded. Some fans accused Gucci of treating artists like assets, disposable once complications arise. Others defended him, saying no mentor owes unlimited loyalty if rules are broken. The internet did what it always does, picked sides without knowing the full story. But behind the noise, something more serious was happening. Trust was gone. People close to Pooh Shiesty say he felt boxed in, unable to speak freely, yet expected to remain loyal without explanation. To Gucci's supporters, that frustration looked like ingratitude. The same actions were being read in completely opposite ways. And that's where this beef becomes dangerous. Because when two people believe they are both right and both betrayed, resolution becomes almost impossible. Gucci Mane's legacy is built on survival, reinvention, and control. He's seen loyalty shift, friends disappear, and the industry turn cold. From his point of view, protecting his empire comes before emotions. If someone threatens the structure, even unintentionally, distance becomes necessary. Pooh Shiesty, meanwhile, represents a generation that values visibility, transparency, and immediate support. Silence isn't neutral, it's disrespect. And respect is currency. The disconnect wasn't just personal, it was generational. As subtle shots started surfacing, fans noticed the tension rising. The lyrics sounded different. Body language changed. The energy that once screamed family now felt forced. Every move was analyzed. Every word was clipped, reposted, and argued over. And still, Pooh Shiesty stayed quiet. That silence became its own message. Because in hip-hop, silence doesn't mean peace. It means pressure building. Gucci firing back publicly didn't just shock fans, it confirmed their worst fears. Loyalty had officially been questioned out loud. Once that happens, there's no undo button. The conversation shifts from misunderstanding to betrayal. And here's the truth most people miss. This isn't about who's right or wrong. It's about control of the narrative. Gucci speaks from a position of power, experience, and influence. Pooh Shiesty speaks, or prepares to speak, from a position of frustration and expectation. One controls the platform. The other controls the story people are waiting to hear. And now, that story is coming. Because sources say Pooh Shiesty's response isn't emotional, it's calculated. Not loud, but strategic. This isn't about disrespect. It's about clearing his name in a system where silence has already cost him. Fans think this beef is peaking, but this is only the foundation. What comes next won't be a diss record or a quick interview. It will be context, receipts, and a version of events that forces people to reconsider everything they thought they knew. The moment Pooh Shiesty finally decided to move, it wasn't loud. There was no sudden rant, no emotional outburst, no desperate attempt to trend. Instead, what insiders describe is something far more dangerous in hip-hop: controlled timing. For months, silence had been weaponized against him. Every day he stayed quiet, the narrative hardened. Fans filled in the blanks. Blogs picked sides. Loyalty questions turned into assumptions. And in this industry, assumptions stick longer than facts. Pooh Shiesty understood that if he spoke too early, he'd sound defensive. If he spoke too late, he'd look guilty. So he waited not for sympathy, but for leverage. According to people close to his camp, that leverage came in the form of clarity. Private conversations began resurfacing. Timelines were revisited. Moments that once felt small suddenly looked intentional. Pooh Shiesty didn't see himself as disloyal, he saw himself as left exposed. In his mind, loyalty wasn't about obedience. It was about protection when the spotlight turned harsh. And when that protection didn't come, something broke. What fans don't always realize is how deeply jail time reshapes relationships in hip-hop. It magnifies silence. It makes every public move personal. Pooh Shiesty watched the industry keep moving while his name became a headline without a voice attached to it. From his perspective, the distance felt strategic, not accidental. That's where his mindset shifted. Instead of trying to win Gucci Mane back, Pooh Shiesty focused on winning the truth back. The goal wasn't to burn bridges, it was to explain why the bridge felt shaky in the first place. And once that intention formed, everything changed. Subtle signals started appearing. Lyrics felt heavier. Posts felt intentional. The tone wasn't angry, it was measured. Fans picked up on it immediately. Something was coming, and it wasn't a diss. It was a statement. Meanwhile, Gucci Mane's side grew firmer. From Gucci's perspective, this wasn't about abandonment, it was about boundaries. Mentorship, in his world, comes with rules. Respect the structure. Move carefully. Don't blur business with emotion. To him, public loyalty doesn't require constant noise. Silence can be protection. Distance can be strategy. But that's the problem with loyalty in hip-hop, everyone defines it differently. Gucci Mane has survived eras where speaking too much got people hurt or killed. Pooh Shiesty came up in a generation where silence equals neglect. Neither view is fake. They just collide. When Gucci fired back publicly, behind the scenes, industry figures started paying attention. Not because of the drama, but because of the implications. If an artist of Pooh Shiesty's stature felt unsupported during critical moments, what did that say about the system? And if Gucci Mane felt challenged by an artist he helped build, what did that say about control in modern mentorships? The conversation quietly expanded beyond them. Fans began rewatching old interviews. Old clips resurfaced. Lines that once sounded harmless now felt loaded. People noticed pauses, side glances, energy shifts that were invisible before. Suddenly, the past looked different. And that's when the balance shifted. Pooh Shiesty wasn't begging for public sympathy. He wasn't trying to cancel Gucci Mane. He was doing something far more impactful. He was humanizing himself, showing that growth doesn't always come with gratitude packaged neatly. That sometimes, pressure creates fractures even in relationships that start with respect. Gucci Mane, on the other hand, stood firm. He didn't walk anything back. And that consistency reinforced his image, disciplined, controlled, unmoved by emotion. To his supporters, that was strength. To his critics, it looked cold. Both narratives gained power. And when two powerful narratives collide, the industry doesn't stay neutral. Artists quietly took sides. Some publicly, some privately. Not out of hatred, but out of reflection. Everyone saw themselves somewhere in this situation. The mentor who felt challenged. The artist who felt unheard. The silence that meant safety to one and abandonment to the other. That's why this beef hit harder than most. It wasn't performative. It was familiar. As Pooh Shiesty's response continued to unfold, one thing became clear. He wasn't trying to rewrite history. He was trying to add missing chapters. Chapters that explain why loyalty can fracture without betrayal. Why respect can exist alongside disappointment. Why walking different paths doesn't always mean burning the same bridge. But hip-hop doesn't reward nuance. It rewards dominance. And that's where the real danger sits. Because the more this story unfolds, the less room there is for reconciliation. Pride sets in. Narratives solidify. Fans stop listening and start defending. Once that happens, even truth struggles to breathe. Gucci Mane's legacy doesn't crumble from this. It stands firm. Pooh Shiesty's future doesn't collapse either. It sharpens. What's at stake now isn't reputation, it's definition. Who defines loyalty? Who controls the story? And who decides when silence becomes betrayal? This isn't over because neither side feels finished. And the industry rarely allows two strong voices to coexist without forcing a winner and a loser. But here's the twist most people don't see coming. The real impact of this beef won't be felt now. It will be felt in who artists trust next, who they sign with, who they expect to speak for them when things get dark. Because after this, mentorship in hip-hop won't be viewed the same way again. By the time the dust began to settle, one thing was clear. This was no longer just a Gucci Mane versus Pooh Shiesty situation. It had evolved into something much bigger, a case study of power, loyalty, and survival in modern hip-hop. The immediate aftermath didn't come with explosions. There were no dramatic sit-downs, no viral apologies, no public peace treaties. Instead, what followed was far more telling: silence with intention. Gucci Mane kept moving exactly how legends move when they believe they've said enough. Pooh Shiesty, meanwhile, stopped being viewed as just a young artist caught in controversy and started being seen as someone navigating an unforgiving system with limited room to speak. And that shift mattered. Industry insiders quietly acknowledged what fans were already sensing. This beef changed how people talk about mentorship. For years, labels sold the idea of family, but situations like this expose the fine print. Loyalty, it turns out, is rarely written into contracts. It's assumed, interpreted, and enforced differently depending on who holds power. Gucci Mane's camp doubled down on structure. Their message, subtle but firm, was that success comes with expectations, discipline, patience, and understanding that not every move needs to be public. From that side, emotional reactions were seen as distractions. Survival meant control. Pooh Shiesty's side, however, leaned into something else entirely: context. Not accusations, context. They wanted people to understand what it feels like to be celebrated on the way up and question the moment complications appear. In their eyes, loyalty wasn't broken, it was tested and left unanswered. That difference in interpretation is where the story truly settles. Fans didn't stop debating. If anything, the arguments became more intense. Some saw Gucci as a necessary gatekeeper, protecting his brand and legacy in an industry that eats its own. Others saw Pooh Shiesty as a symbol of how young artists are expected to stay quiet, grateful, and obedient, even when they feel abandoned. Neither side fully won. Neither side fully lost. And that's why this ending feels unresolved, because real-life consequences rarely arrive with clean conclusions. Behind the scenes, the ripple effects began to show. Artists started asking harder questions before signing deals. Managers paid closer attention to how support actually plays out under pressure. Silence, once seen as strategy, was now being scrutinized as a possible warning sign. The unspoken rules of loyalty were no longer assumed, they were questioned. That's the quiet power of this situation. Gucci Mane's legacy remains intact. Decades of influence don't disappear because of one fractured relationship. If anything, his position as a disciplined, business-first figure became even more defined. Supporters admired his refusal to bend. Critics labeled it cold. But either way, the image stayed strong. Pooh Shiesty's future, meanwhile, became more complex and more interesting. He was no longer just Gucci's artist. He became his own narrative, one shaped by restraint instead of reaction, by timing instead of noise. His response didn't scream rebellion, it suggested evolution. And in hip-hop, evolution is often misunderstood before it's respected. What's fascinating is that neither man needed to destroy the other to move forward. The damage wasn't personal, it was structural. A system built on loyalty without definition was bound to crack eventually. And that's the real takeaway. This wasn't about betrayal. It was about expectations colliding without communication. Gucci Mane expected understanding. Pooh Shiesty expected presence. Both believed they were right. As time passed, the internet moved on as it always does. New beefs surfaced. New headlines replaced old ones. But for those paying attention, this story lingered. It became a reference point whenever artists talked about support, silence, and power dynamics. Because even when the noise fades, the lesson stays. Hip-hop has always glorified loyalty, but rarely explains it. Situations like this force the culture to confront uncomfortable truths, that loyalty looks different depending on where you stand, and that silence can either protect or isolate, sometimes both at the same time. There was no dramatic final shot fired in this war. No official declaration of peace. Just two figures walking separate paths, carrying their own versions of the truth. And maybe that's the most realistic ending of all. Because in an industry built on image, the hardest thing to accept is nuance. Not every conflict needs a villain. Not every disagreement needs a winner. Sometimes, the most powerful outcome is awareness. Gucci Mane continues forward as the architect of his empire. Pooh Shiesty moves ahead as an artist shaped by pressure